So right off the rip, I just have to take a second and say, I'm actually kind of taken aback here. I fired off the group stage recap for Blast London, and then like most of the time when I make videos, I just kind of put it out of my mind and just go about my business. I had no idea that I would wake up in just a day and a half, 2 days time to see that this video just hit the Brazilian algorithm, and you guys corresponded by going absolutely sicko mode in terms of the metrics. This is like my third or fourth most watched video, and it's like just a pretty standard group stage recap for me. So thank you guys so much for that. That's an incredible amount of support. Shout out to Brazil, and you know, regardless of what I may think, I kind of now want Furia to win, because if I make like 3 more Furia success videos, I might hit 15k subs by the end of next week. Anyways, today we're going to kick it back, keep it chill, and look ahead to the Blast London playoffs starting tomorrow and give you guys my playoff predictions going in. We're going to analyze both of the quarterfinal matches, the prospective semis after that, and try and predict who will win it all. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, you can show me by leaving a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, help me get 10k subs by the end of the year. Also, follow me on twitch.tv/LionHeartZ2, it'll help me out immensely. And lastly, before we get started, I would like to thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey, a CS2 trading website. You put in the skins that you want to trade, you select what you want, you use my code LionHeartZ for up to $5 off, or click the top link in the description, and boom, new drip.
Nice.
You can also use my code for a 35% deposit bonus if you want to buy with real money. And they have a free section with cool giveaways. So check the top link in the description, use my code to buy 15 Dragon Lores to let them know I sent you their way, and thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. So right at the top, I wanted to sort our 6 teams into 3 tiers of contenders. We have those who have an outside shot but kind of need a perfect set of circumstances. We have teams who could win it given the right set of circumstances, and then we have the heavy favorites. The way I'm breaking it down is like this. Our lone team in the outside shot tier, the team that needs the most amount of miracles to possibly win this, is M80. They are the worst qualified team in this playoffs. They've never made a tier 1 playoff ever with this lineup, and if they were to make the grand finals, they'd have to beat the number 4 team in MOUZ, the number 2 team in Vitality, and then they'd have to beat whoever comes out the bracket on the other side in an S tier best of 5 grand finals, the first time they would make it as a roster. And if they manage to do all of that, it will be one of the most improbable playoff runs and tournament wins in the history of Counter-Strike. So given all of that, despite my love and admiration for M80 and the fact they have saved North American Counter-Strike, I would say they have the most outside shot to win this event, at least for right now. Now, again, to be clear, I'm not saying there's not a chance. It's just not the greatest. Anyways, our next tier above that, the teams that could absolutely win it on the right day, I would have to say that belongs to Faze and G2 for very different reasons. Faze, just a lot of question marks. You have Jacob walking into his first playoff environment at the tier 1 level. Brokey and Frozen are inconsistent players. We don't know what kind of Rain or Kerrigan we'll get in a playoff environment. We could get playoff Faze, in which case they're a threat to win it all. We could also get playoff Faze, in which case they could be bombing out immediately. For G2, it's less an issue of personnel, as I really do think Hunter has shown out as an IGL thus far, and MOUZ and Heavy God are a great rifling duo to work with. The question really is going to be around Sunpius and Matties. I think Sunpius is going to struggle in matchups against Brokey and especially Moladoy. If he gets to the grand finals, there's great oppers on the other side he has to deal with anyways. Sunpius simply hasn't lived up to the potential we thought he could bring to G2 thus far, and he needs to power up in this playoffs for them to be a massive threat. And then for Matties, he has a similar issue to Jacob of this being his first time in this kind of environment. Will he rise up and really show out, or will he not really be able to find his footing initially? Both Faze and G2 benefit from the fact that they're on the side of the bracket where really the weaker teams are on the whole. They don't have to deal with MOUZ or Vitality potentially until the finals, so their pathway into a grand finals is certainly easier than an M80, for example, and that's why they occupy this tier. And that leaves the final tier, the true contenders, as Furia, MOUZ, and Vitality. And I feel like this doesn't take much to explain. These are the 3 strongest teams in the format, 2 of them go straight through to the semifinals, and one of them in MOUZ has been one of the most consistent playoff performers for the entire year. Unfortunately for MOUZ and Vitality, they have to contend with each other just en route to the grand finals, whereas Furia have one of the cleanest paths to the grand finals of the entire bracket. Vitality are also trying to answer many questions about can they return to the form that dominated all of the first half of this year. Meanwhile, MOUZ are kind of fighting their own demons with their T-sides having struggled in recent times. If MOUZ can reproduce their results from Cologne and beat Vitality again, are they just set to crumble in yet another grand final appearance after? And then for Vitality, can they overcome MOUZ and get revenge and maintain that quality of form against a very threatening Furia team? Even within this contender group, I do think there are some levels to this. Overall, my current thoughts and what I said in the group stage recap remain true. I think Furia are the strongest team in this field and the heavy favorites to win it all. Let's just see how it bears out in a playoff environment. With that, let's take a look at our quarterfinal matchups and get these predictions out of the way. Starting off with what I think will be the more interesting of the two quarterfinal games, we have Faze versus G2. Now, Faze and G2 have played many matches against each other over the years, but this is actually the first time that Kerrigan and Hunter are going to square off as IGLs. The last time these two teams played against each other was back at IM Katowice in the beginning of this year, over 7 months ago, when m0NESY and Snax were still on the same lineup. Faze won that game, by the way. Fuck you, Snax. Anyways, setting aside my obvious Faze bias, I think when you looked at this matchup objectively, these teams are very evenly matched. I think there's going to be a lot of small variables that potentially affect the outcome, but I would predict this to be one of those matches that goes all 3 maps and gets pretty dirty before it's done. I don't expect many clean victories from either team on whatever maps they choose. Looking at the veto situation, I think we're very likely to see a combination of maps like Mirage, Inferno, Nuke, and potentially Ancient, as otherwise Faze tend to remove Train. Neither team has shown much of an inclination of playing Overpass thus far, and Faze tend to not like to play Dust 2 very often. So given that, those remaining maps, Mirage, Inferno, Nuke, and Ancient, make for a pretty even playing field as both teams love those 4 maps, especially over the recent period. The highlight matchup in this series 100% for me is how Sunpius and Brokey are going to square up against each other. These are the 2 swing players. They will more or less decide this series outcome in my opinion. If Brokey can play like he did in the group stage, then Faze I think actually have a hefty advantage in terms of firepower. Sunpius would need to show a lot of grit and a lot of very sturdy omping I think to match what we saw from Brokey, and on top of that, G2 would have to find a way to keep Frozen from really feasting on the leftovers. I would give G2 the overall edge in terms of rifling firepower, as Heavy God and Hunter are certainly going to carry more weight than Rain and Kerrigan outside of the occasional Rain game, which is always on the table. Jacob is also going to be a big swing point. Will his entry work on the T side be disrupted as G2 game plan around him, as well as of course the fact that he might get cold feet on the stage for the first time. Given all of that, I'm inclined to lean towards Faze, but that is definitely out of a heavy bit of bias. I think if I remove that bias, then G2 are more than capable of winning this series, and if you go into it with them as your favorite, I would totally understand that. I'm just going to kind of put a lot of faith into Frozen and Brokey as X factors in the series, and say that Faze are going to walk away with a 2-1 victory and go on to the semifinals. Swinging over to the other side of the bracket, our other quarterfinal matchup is MOUZ versus M80, and pretty much what we're trying to find is there any kind of circumstance we can set up where M80 can walk away with this victory. They are the heavy underdogs, so how can we craft a scenario where they have their best shot? Well, looking immediately at the veto, things aren't looking that great, as M80 are a 100% permaban Nuke team. And while Nuke is certainly a good map for MOUZ, it means that M80 have no flexibility to take another map that MOUZ are good off the table. The problem with that Nuke permaban is that M80 aren't like a Kerrigan-led team where they're willing to float their perma. They're going to take that off the board every single time, which means MOUZ are going to automatically get one of their better maps, most likely Mirage, no matter what. And if you're MOUZ, I am first pick banning Overpass almost every single time, just because of the fact that M80, at least in this tournament, have shown a proclivity for first picking Overpass when possible and jumping teams on it. They did it to Vitality, they did it to Virtus Pro, I believe, as well. They lost that game, but hey, they still did it. So if you're MOUZ, you know you're the heavy favorites. Don't give them a new map that you're not super confident on and give them a chance to run some momentum. So I think MOUZ are going to ban Overpass pretty much every single time. MOUZ do like to ban out Dust 2 when possible, but frankly, that's oftentimes against teams that are just better on Dust 2 than they are, and I don't think they're worried about that in a matchup against M80, so why bother? Just take Overpass away. After that, I think it becomes a pretty big toss-up. You could definitely see after Mirage an Inferno pick, maybe an Ancient, I'm not really sure, but I think Overpass getting banned, Nuke getting banned out by M80, and then Mirage being picked first or second seems like a lock. Really, this is just going to come down to whether M80 can find more heroics. Can they find unreal round wins like they did to get into the playoffs in the first place? Will Lake maintain the form he showed in the online portion in the move to the stage? Will they be able to survive the errors they're inevitably going to give up? Because that's just the kind of team they are. They play loose, they play fast, they play frantic. They're gonna make errors occasionally. It's how they recover thereafter that's gotten them this far. M80, they're fighting an absolute uphill battle. If they could take a map off MOUZ, I would consider that an absolute success. Can they win this series? I'm not gonna say no, because you can't just write off the fact that MOUZ could go missing. That's totally possible. But they would have to go missing extremely, and M80 would have to play their asses off. I think I would take nothing away from M80 if they rocked up, put up a good fight, but quietly bowed out of this tournament in the quarterfinals. Making it this far in the first place is already a stunning result for them, and if they can shoot any higher, then that's just another miracle stacked on top. But I think overall, we'll see MOUZ go on to face Vitality in the semifinals, and they're most likely going to do it in 2 games. Okay, so looking ahead at this prospective semifinals, I'm going to say Faze are going through over G2 just because I'm biased, but again, I really think you can pick either team here, and I don't think it changes much about what would happen in this prospective semifinals. I think Furia would still be the heavy favorites, and I do not think Faze would be able to do it unless Furia did not perform up to expectations. I think Fallen is calling at an incredibly high level. Molodoi speaks for himself. He is arguably, at worst, the 3rd best opper in the world right now. Zyro is still playing very highly at his prime. And then Yuri and Yakindar are just more than good enough supporting pieces to make it work. In either case, G2 or Faze, both teams are going to rely on heroics to get over the line. Brokey would have to show out in a massive way. Frozen would have to carry to an extent that he did do in the group stage, but would he be able to do it in a high-stakes semifinal environment? For G2, I repeat exactly what I said about Sunpius before. I think Sunpius would hold up even worse against Molodoi, and has held up worse against Molodoi in previous matchups. No matter how you slice it, I think Furia are advancing to the grand finals, but I expect there to be a map dropped. I would say this series goes to 3 games, either against Faze or G2. That being said, let's jump over to our other semifinals. MOUZ, Vitality, the rematch. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think Vitality are going to win this. And I think Zywo will have a just 100% vengeance game for what happened in Cologne. I think Vitality are positioned to be hungry. They're playing better at this event. Zywo especially has played better compared to his first 2 tournaments back from the player break. And flat out, I think looking back on it, not only did MOUZ have to play one of their best series as a team ever with Xerxin and Torji playing damn near flawlessly, but they needed FlameZ and Zywo to play some of their worst series under Vitality point blank period to get that series over the line in 2 games. So this time, I do think that Vitality will lose a map. I think this will go all 3 maps, but Vitality will walk away with a pretty firm victory. A lot of this just has to do with my lack of faith in MOUZ as a team. I think MOUZ are just kind of the perennial bridesmaids. I don't see enough in them to power through and win big S-tier tournaments and overcome Vitality multiple times. I think people are actually starting to underrate Vitality because of how they performed so far, and this is their moment to kind of just make everyone take a step back and remember what this team can do. I think in terms of maps, we'll probably see the exact same maps that were played in the Cologne series, with maybe the addition of MOUZ choosing to remove a train instead of Inferno, but we're most likely going to get a first map on Mirage, we'll play Inferno or Train afterwards, then end up with either Nuke or Overpass as the decider. But given all that, I just think Vitality are going to strike out and take this series back in their favor. Unless MOUZ continue to play excellent against Vitality, which is certainly possible, I just don't see MOUZ being able to replicate this form in 2 consecutive series against Vitality. And that would leave us with a Vitality, Furia, best of 5 grand finals. And honestly, that is a daunting task for Furia to take on. No matter what form Vitality might be in, we have to remember, this Vitality core have never lost a best of 5 grand final. However, this is the most vulnerable this Vitality core has ever been since their rise to dominance. That does lead me to believe that there is room for Furia to win it all. It will be an uphill series. It will test Molodoi, Yakindar, and Cacerado to the very extent of their star power. Molodoi especially will have to fight a Herculean effort to outpace Zywo and be the dominant opper in this matchup. I think Fallen will be able to hold against Apex in terms of calling more than adequately, and past that, I look to players like Rops and actually Yuri as massive potential swing points in a series like this, as I think Yuri could be preyed upon a little bit in his CT side setups buy players on Vitality. Meanwhile, Rops's lurking and clutch potential could be the huge swing down the stretch to give Vitality momentum enough to win maps. It's so hard to project this far forward because we don't even know if these teams will make it in the first place, but if we do get here, we get this Furia Vitality Grand Final, I expect it to have potential to be quite entertaining, one that would end up maybe going potentially 4 or 5 maps even. Given that, I think it would be fair to label Vitality as just the default favorites for a multitude of reasons, but I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I think this tournament is totally up for grabs, and given the landscape having been so top heavy for this last 6 months in CS, I think it would be refreshing, but also equally possible for Fury to strike out and win themselves a Tier 1 trophy, finally get that big notable Tier 1 win for Serato, and establish themselves as not just a true top 5 threat, but a title contending roster as we head into the build-up for Budapest. Furia are not just a team that Brazil can believe in, it's a team that the world can get behind. They play some of the most entertaining Counter-Strike in the world right now, and given that, I'm going behind them to win all of Blast London and take it all home. To see if I'm correct, you guys can come back to this channel starting tomorrow afternoon at some point where we'll be doing our first recap for the playoffs. If you guys enjoy this kind of coverage, you can show me by leaving a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and help me hit 10k subs by the end of the year. Thank you to Skins Monkey for sponsoring this video. Check the top link in the description. You go to trade on their website. Let them know I sent you their way. Thank you to Skins Monkey. Thank you to my channel members, Justin, Jesse Furley, Milan Berta, Bubblesj, Dr. Cocktor, Patatas Kaftesi, PTR, Milan Berta, Cody Foxworthy, JesseTiv, Vegt, I'm Flashbanks, Know Me Right, Rowdy, LBKcs, Snax Enjoyer, Crunchywater, zerotwocs, drudenae, chron, Gano, Zyro, Devvrat Singh, and our newest channel member, Clyde Mead. If you want to support me directly, this is the best way to do it. For $5 a month, you get an animated video just like this, as well as our custom role in our community Discord. Follow me on Twitch.tv/LionHeartZ. I'll see you guys soon. Peace out. Love to Brazil. Caralho.